Hello and welcome into Tobacco Road and Abroad. My name's Gareth Parsons, joined by Aiden Moore. Aiden, we've got a lot to talk about today, tournament. But first of all, how are you doing? Glad to have
Doing
you back
well,
on.
doing well, doing well. I mean, rough showing for the Tar Heels in the tournament, but we got a lot to hop into. A lot of tournament, well, actually, a lack of tournament madness, but no madness. I'm thinking is madness, in my opinion. A lot of a lot of upsets that were brewing, didn't amount to anything. A lot of interesting stories going into this tournament, and I want to reflect on those. We got opening day in the MLB. Just a lot of stuff to cover, and I'm really excited for this episode. I'm excited to hop into it.
I am too. First, I'll start with obviously some just like general Tobacco Road news. I mean, we've talked about it on here for like a week or two now. NC State hiring Will Wade. This is something where it's like, it's been rumored and in the works, and supposedly he put pen to paper a while ago, but it's official. He was announced as the new head coach today officially. Someone I've been very excited about. He wasn't my number one candidate, but after like hearing what everyone else had to say, he then became my number one candidate. My initial candidate was Ben McCollum, who was someone I had been really impressed with. He doesn't have a lot of Division One experience, but like Aiden and I've talked about on here before, he had success like D2 and D3 was dominant, and then he has had success at Drake the last 2 years and really turned them around. But honestly, Will Wade I think was the way to go. Interesting little tidbit blueberry fact. He was NC State's priority, like number one hire to follow up Godfrey. He was number one on the list. But then Will Wade was talking about how he was going to wait and see if the Clemson job opened up. So that's when NC State went with Kevin Keats. So I think, they usually say third time's the charm. I think second time's the charm. Like, because we wanted this guy. We liked what he was about initially. And I think that also shows me. So our previous athletic director, Debbie Yao, had like a knack for hiring good coaches. Like that was her thing. Is like she was known for hiring coaches that turned sports around, even like non-major sports. Like I think she hired Braden Holloway, who put NC State swimming on the map. She hired the current. I mean, she didn't hire Avon. That Avon was a hire a long time. Avon's been the baseball coach since my dad was little. Yeah, Avon's that old. But
Yeah.
like she's made a lot of like signature hires in all sports at all levels at NC State that have really turned those programs around. Because outside of football and basketball, NC State's like up. If you claw me, I'll be very sad because you've been so nice to me. I won't be mad. But sorry, I'm babysitting a coworker's cat, so Somali's going to be joining us for a while. So, but no, like I said, if this Will Wade being someone that was on Debbie Yao's list gives me like an extra like layer of like satisfaction with this hire. Meaning like she had a knack for discovering talent, and like I was like if she wanted him, I'm okay. But obviously I think we did an in-depth dive on his resume, but just some quick highlights. He was initially the coach he took over at UNC Charlotte for a few seasons, I believe. But
Mhm.
then from there, he went to where did he go? I forget the first place he went. But from there, from his initial success with his, where was he? Let me look this up real quick. Sorry, I have a lot of tabs open about the Red Sox, so I'm trying to learn about them. So, sorry. Will Wade began his career as a student manager at Clemson. Oh, Chattanooga. Chattanooga. He turned Chattanooga around. He went to VCU where he was a GA a grad assistant.
Mhm.
Went to VCU, won two A10 titles, a regular season and a A10 conference tournament championship. Went to LSU, won his second whole season there, won the SEC title outright. Like from there, he had several runs. I think he went to the Sweet 16 once. The highest he ever finished in the net was 28th. They finished ranked a lot. There was one year where he had like 7 ranked wins in a row. And I don't even think that was the year they won the SEC outright. So a lot of stuff to look forward to. Another big thing, NC State, which is something I wanted them to do. I know Carolina did this. I don't always like, doing what our rivals are doing, but Carolina usually tries to tend to be ahead of the curve in things, whereas NC State's a little more cautious. Just like, they don't want to like, I feel like with certain trends in college sports, people flock to certain things. And a lot of times it's kind of like those pump and dump schemes you see with like the, scam like Bitcoin stuff, like like everyone
Yeah,
has a new version of Bitcoin. And I'm not
yeah.
saying having a GM's that. Like I think having a GM was that one thing, and I think that was one thing that I saw Carolina do. Like I think that's going to be the next step with this NIL, and I'd like to get ahead of the curve. So they hired Andrew Slater, who was a scout for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oklahoma City Thunder, I don't follow enough NBA to know how they're doing this season, but over
They're
the
doing
last couple,
amazing this season right now. They're probably projected to win the NBA championship right now. Best record they've had in years. Really able to turn around their franchise after KD left and Westbrook left. So for a while, it was looking like the OKC Thunder were going to be like just absolute like a poverty franchise for a while, like in the early 20s. But they've been really able to turn it around, utilize a lot of their draft picks that they traded for, and have a really solid like talent roster behind them. So if there's a NBA team to model, I would say right now the hot team to do it is the OKC Thunder. So I will give you this, that you might not necessarily know like that much about them. Like I'm not trying to act like I'm an NBA analyst or anything like that. But if there's a NBA team that I want to replicate right now, it's definitely the OKC Thunder.
yeah, and I know. Excuse me, a little bit. I didn't mean to scare you, buddy. I'm sorry. Excuse me, sorry, but damn, I'm sorry, but I do know over the past couple of years the Thunder have had some level of success, so that is something that that I also like. I'm looking forward to this. Like I'm looking. Jesus Christ, it is something that I'm looking forward to, knowing that he's been a part of a great organization that's been relatively successful over the past couple of years. So that's really all I'll offer on that. I will say Will Wade, obviously, he seems confident. He's known for turning teams around pretty fast, which next year I honestly don't mind. Like, obviously, I'm not going to be happy if we miss the tournament, but honestly, first year head coach, like I more than willing to give him a pass because
Yeah,
historically you usually don't make the tournament until the second or third year of the coach. But in this NIL era, we saw with Louisville and several other teams like Missouri. Missouri went 0-18 in conference play last year, and here they are. They were near top of the SEC. I know they lost first round to Drake, but we'll get to that. But that's still a pretty good turnaround, being a tournament team after starting conference play last year 0-18, which is a new coach with some NIL boost, which is what I'm hoping helps State because essentially NC State's aim was to upgrade their NIL budget to 5 to 6 million, which would put them in the top 10% of ACC teams. And that seems to be the plan. Will Wade's essentially hinted at, like, in terms of an NIL budget, he's been handed essentially for his needs a blank check. So we'll see. But that's all I'll really say. We'll have some general. Do we want to do like the general tidbits for college basketball now, or do we want to jump into the tournament and then hit the general tidbits and just random snippets?
let's jump into the tournament. Obviously, UNC had a tough loss against Ole Miss. Not gonna lie, like just relatively lackluster showing in the first half, like absolutely getting dominated. Was able to make it a little bit of a game going into the second half. Kind of mounted a very solid comeback for a while. It was looking like all Tar Heels. Well, it was just they were hot. They were making it close. But just in the end, Ole Miss was able to run away with it and secure the win. Um, the just kind of story of the day, just consistent shooting from Ole Miss, having a solid 44.4% in the field goal percentage, and really able to capitalize on the 3 point shot. That was something that really got UNC into the place, into the tournament to begin with, having just shooting lights out three against San Diego State, but unfortunately they just weren't able to replicate that magic coming into this game, which pretty much cost them the tournament. Ole Miss has been able to amount some like a very solid win against Iowa State, and they are now in the Sweet 16 going up against Michigan State. So, am I necessarily sad that Ole Miss beat UNC? I wouldn't say I'm overall depressed about it. Overall, very lackluster year for UNC. I'm glad they were able to make the tournament. I know a lot of people on the outside are saying things like, "Oh, West Virginia needed that spot," or UNC didn't deserve it. I'm just going to go off of the net. A top 50 team has never missed an out large bid. I think only once or twice. Okay, so
2019 NC State, 2023 St. John's.
yeah, so it's very rare for a top 50 net team to miss the tournament, and UNC was number 36, I believe.
Around there, 30. I think it was 34, but that's two spots. Like, semantics.
Semantics. But like that would have been like one of the highest like net teams to miss the tournament. So I feel like we need to look into that. For me personally, well, looking at the tournament, like I know this is a narrative that me and you are pushing a lot, and I hope it starts getting traction. I really question teams that join super conferences and are unable to get a 500 percentage or a point 500 percentage in conference play. For me, that's just a like I understand that's something that we're going to have to start to accept in this style of basketball now. But I don't. I feel like you aren't entitled to a tournament berth if you aren't at least over 500 in your conference play. So I feel like we're just directing the blame at UNC right now because the ACC is having a little bit of an off year. But in my opinion, you can't be a part of the reason that like college sports is dying by like joining super conferences and then feel entitled to join an NCAA tournament when you fail to make 500 in your conference and your excuse is, oh, the conference is hard. Well, you decided to join that conference to begin with. I feel like the NCAA tournament historically has been, are you the best representative of your conference? That's how it's been. That's how it's always been. In UNC, granted, the ACC is having an off year. UNC is one of the better ACC teams this year. And I don't think West Virginia is the best representative for the Big 12. And I highly question teams like Oklahoma and Texas, teams that have joined the SEC, having an off year in basketball and failing to make 500. Granted, they've had some good late season pushes. I'm not completely discrediting it, but I'm just saying I feel like this is a narrative that's being pushed right now because a lot of people are want to point a finger at somebody to blame this whole conference realignment thing when really we should be kind of taking a look at like teams in like the Big Ten or the SEC. I don't think the SEC deserved, what was it, like 13 or 12 teams in the tournament. I think that's a little bit of just a reach, in my opinion.
They got 14.
14.
Yeah, and that's a tournament record. The previous tournament record was held by the old Big East, the original Super Conference, where they had 11. Here, let's actually look at those 11 teams real quick. What are the 11 teams that made the tournament out of the Big East? Where is it? Conferences that have sent the most teams to a NCAA tournament. 11 seeds. So this is who. This is what they had that year. They had the number 1 overall seed Pittsburgh. They had a 2 seed Notre Dame, 3 seed Syracuse, 3 seed UConn, 4 seed Louisville, 5 seed West Virginia, 6 seed Cincinnati, 6 seed Georgetown, 6 seed St. John's, 9 seed Villanova, 11 seed Marquette. Let me look at the 2011 Big East standings, and we'll evaluate it based on, kind of our our kind of measurements. And one thing that Aiden and I talked about, like we said, what can be, in our opinion, your saving grace based on, say you have a sub 500 conference record. If you win enough games to get you close enough to 500 in your conference tournament, we're willing to be a little bit more lenient. So, like in Arkansas, Arkansas checks the box. 1 or 2 games below 500, 3 or 4 games in the SEC tournament. Put them above 500. Okay, Arkansas is not. Do I think they should have been in? Like personally, no. But based on the metric that Aiden and I think would be a good way to evaluate, they should have been in. And they've showed it. So here are the 2011 Big East Conference standings. Here they are. So, yep, they fit our thing. The lowest team in the Big East to make the NCAA tournament, you know what their conference record was, Aiden?
What?
9-9. Granted, all right, so it was Villanova and UConn with 9-9. Yes, the 3 seed UConn. Granted, that UConn team had a crazy non-conference record, but Pittsburgh 15-3, Notre Dame 14-4, Syracuse 12-6, Louisville 12-6, St. John's 12-6, Cincinnati 11-7, West Virginia 11-7, Georgetown 10-8, UConn 9-9, Villanova 9-9, Marquette 9-9, and then Seton Hall was 7-11 and missed the tournament. But
it passes.
That Big East was hard. All 9 of UConn's losses in that 32-9 season were in conference, and they were to 9 of the top 10 teams that got in the Big East. They were to Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, Syracuse, Louisville, St. John's. Can you not claw me, please? Cincinnati, West Virginia, Georgia Tech, Connecticut, and Villanova. I'll pet you. Come here. Sorry, folks. But no, that's an example of a super conference done right. And I feel like to an extent that's how the Big 12 is sometimes. Like the Big 12 at times, yes, they've gotten a lot of teams in, but they've been deserving teams. Everyone's saying, people complaining about the SEC right now, oh, it's just you're tired of the SEC. It's just SEC fatigue. It's just SEC fatigue. I'm like, no, the Big 12 does it right. The Big 12 does it right. I think, and would you agree? Now, I feel like it's a little absurd some years when the Big 12 gets like 8 and 9 teams in, but it's not unprecedented. 14 is unprecedented. I'm sorry. That is
14 is unprecedented, especially if you consider a fact like I'll give Arkansas a pass, but like Oklahoma and Texas are the main teams that I don't think deserve the pass, in my opinion, just because they've had lackluster performances in this tournament. Oklahoma getting beat by UConn, Texas out in the game against Xavier. There's one thing, like, you can say your conference is hard, but like I think it gets to a point. Like if you're looking at these, like, what is it, like 7 and 10 teams in conference play? Like, I'm sorry,
6 and 12.
6 and 12. I can't give you that pass.
2 6 and 12 teams.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just below 500. You're 250 in conference play. You're 250 in conference play.
250.
But no. With that being said, I think we'll move into some of the matchups that we wanted to highlight. Do you have any particular ones you want to highlight? I know we got some upsets. You and I probably have some similar ones that we want to highlight.
Let's just start off with first round matchups that we thought were important. Starting off in the first round, the first game overall was Creighton versus Louisville. Creighton able to get the solid win against Louisville. I know you were pretty high on this Louisville team. I picked Creighton picking this one, so let it be known that I had a perfect bracket for a time and Gareth did not. But regardless, Louisville, I think just didn't show up for this matchup like as at the level that I would like them to. I mean, granted, this Creighton team is like very solid. I don't think this is like an absolutely detrimental loss to Louisville, but I think like highlighting this 9 and 8 seed game was kind of important. Going on in other first round matchups, the one we really want to talk about, let's just get it out of the way. Michigan versus UC San Diego. Man, like
They were
Gareth,
close.
Gareth, take it away.
This is one where Aiden and I are like, this is a perfect storm. You've got the team that turns it over the most in Power Five, and the team that forces the most. So like it seems like a perfect storm. And honestly, at halftime, we were looking kind of foolish. They were down 41-27. They really weren't doing anything. But then the second half rolls around, and not even 4 minutes into the second half, they cut that 14-point deficit to 2. Not even 4 minutes into the second half. They opened the second half. Excuse me. They opened the second half on a 12-0 run before Michigan's coach finally called a timeout. So they came out meaning business. And then Michigan pulled away for it. But then from like 6 minutes on, it was around a one-possession game. Michigan committed 14 turnovers. I think the biggest difference in this game would be just the overall field goal percentage and the 3-point shooting. The three just was not falling for UC San Diego. They did not shoot the three all, and usually, I think for teams to do well, and especially underdogs to win, the threes, not necessarily all the time, but the threes have to be falling in kind of a decent amount. And shooting 23.7% from three that's not even going to get it done if you're the favorite to win sometimes. But shout out to UC San Diego. They found a way. They found a way to stay in the game. They found a way to fight back. They forced turnovers. It also helped that Michigan missed a few big free throws down the stretch. Even as a mid-major team, they didn't really struggle with rebounding. They were only out-rebounded by 5 total rebounds. So outside of kind of the questionable shooting at times in the game, they really kind of took it to Michigan. And they showed up in a way that was nice. It was kind of refreshing. But, unfortunately, they weren't able to get it done. And that play that was drawn up to end the game, I'm sorry, that's not the shot.
I think they were out of timeouts at that point. So like with that last play, I believe they were out of timeouts. Like I'll give it a little bit of a pass, but that was just not a sad ending to a otherwise like what could have been like an amazing game.
It already was an amazing game. It would have been an amazing ending. It was a phenomenal game. That second half was entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Another game I want to highlight is the one where the upset did come is Drake, Missouri. Drake was one of the teams where like a month ago people were really high on them and really trying to be like, oh, pick Drake for an upset. But in the past couple weeks, there was a lot of anti-Drake propaganda saying they play too slow. Like, they're going to get the doors blown off them. Underdog teams that play fast usually do well in March. But that's not the case here. Drake came out with some attitude. They were up 7 at the half. And then Drake just kind of continued from there. They almost blew the lead. Missouri, I think, may have even taken the lead with a little bit of time left. But then Drake, they were methodical. They did what they needed to do. And I know for people who just look at the stat sheet, they're like, oh, of course they won. They shot 50% from three. But that's not like, if you look deeper, that's not necessarily like why they won. They were like 50% from three, still 50% from three, but they were 5 of 10. Most Division I teams take around 15 threes a game, 15 and 20. They took 10. Yes, overall, they shot 25 for 46 in the field. They shot very well, and Missouri did not shoot very well. But I think that lends itself to the type of defense Ben McCollum has Drake play. They like to force a lot of tough twos. And when you shoot from three, they like to force a lot of tough threes. There's not a lot of open shots with the way he plays defense, which is a big reason why I wanted him at NC State. Was not only because yes, it's a snail pace, and I'm not the biggest fan, but if your offense is efficient, who gives a crap? Who cares? If you can make baskets at a high level and take smart shots, I quite frankly don't care what pace you play at, which is why I'm so high on Houston, and a
Hmm.
lot of people aren't. But
Hmm.
I mean, a big thing about this game was Missouri was a collective 15 for 45. They only made 15 field goals in a game. Like that is poor.
Yeah.
That is poor. Do you have any thoughts about this game?
I mean, I had Missouri winning this one. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of bought into the Drake propaganda a little bit. I'm starting to kind of come around a little bit more. I've been like dipping my toes a little bit in the slow pace isn't necessarily the death of you. Like I've been dipping my toes into it a little bit, but this tournament has just kind of like made me a full believer right now. I can admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong about Drake, and just able to make smart shots against a team that on all levels should be better than you, but being able to just come out and play your style of basketball is always going to be able to win the day. And that's how Drake was able to win the day, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just I was kind of like I wasn't necessarily not high on teams that played slow because we've seen it before and then be really successful. And one guy who we talked on here, he has like the Gordon Popovich zone metric where he measures teams based on offensive efficiency and tempo, but his system favors fast tempos over slow tempos. So like he puts more weight on being an average tempo team and average efficiency. He places them over teams like Houston, who are one of the most efficient teams on the planet, but are slow. And he says, and this is not me dogging him because it takes a lot of courage to put your like not only your sports opinions out there, but to make a metric to evaluate teams and then put it out there and
Hmm.
then use said metric to choose your bracket. It does take a lot of bravery. So I'm not knocking the guy. I'm not calling him like dumb or anything. I'm just saying like a lot of people he's one of the people that I saw fully brought into kind of the pace of play propaganda. And yes, the teams that like good teams tend to play fast. But I feel like that's just because they're good and they get a lot of points in transition. Like that I feel like good teams who are good in transition, I feel like that artificially pumps up their pace of play stat because pace of play is literally only calculated by possessions per 60, or sorry, possessions per 40, which is just possessions per 40 minutes of play. So, but like I said, we've been proven wrong on that pace thing before. So another game is there again? Do you kind of want to go back and forth, like kind of pit pat on this? What's another game you'd want to highlight? Like just
In the
maybe an
first
upset.
in the first round, hmm, I think Marquette versus New Mexico. I mean, just getting the 10 over the 7 seed, New Mexico was uh, it was just pretty close in the first half with a 35-32 game. Just New Mexico really able to just take it away from Marquette in that second half in clutch time. Like it was like around the like what was it, the 3 minute mark in the second half. That's when like New Mexico like really was able to kind of like put on the Jets and make it happen. A lot of turnovers in this game. 13 for New Mexico, 12 for Marquette. But ability to get rebounds was something that I think really differentiated New Mexico in this matchup. Um, both teams had a very solid 3 point percentage and field goal percentage, but it was in I feel like the rebounds at those pivotal moments that really got New Mexico across the edge.
Yeah, rebounding is something Marquette tends to struggle with, particularly running that 5 out style of offense, where their forwards, maybe not necessarily this year, but typically their forwards are built almost more like guards, and guards can be pretty good rebounders. Like Providence's best rebounder last year was their guard, Devin Carter. But it's just kind of like that guard build, when you're on the inside. It's really hard to get those offensive rebounds. And Marquette ends up taking a lot of long twos and contested threes. So that's just not a recipe for success when it comes to rebounding. But one thing I also want to talk about is Shaka Smart. Shaka Smart, about 10 years ago, he was the hottest commodity. He was the mid major coach you wanted for your team. His VCU team went on had a miracle run in 2011. From there, Will Wade was actually the current NC State coaches was his replacement at VCU. Shaka Smart went to a lot of took VCU as a mid major. They made the tournament constantly. They won the A10 constantly. He went to Texas, but a trend I noticed at Texas every single year in the NCAA tournament, I think, save for maybe one or two. What do you think? I'll let you guess here. What do you think all of the teams that Shaka Smart has lost to in March have in common?
Rebounds, the ability to.
Yes. He hasn't always run that stupid five out. That's not what I'm getting at. Yes, that's one thing. Because a team he lost to a few years ago, they necessarily weren't great. They out rebounded him, yes, but they weren't necessarily better at rebounding.
Pace of play.
Not necessarily.
Man, I'm not going to be able to get it.
It is something that is abhorrently embarrassing. Like even as like a 2 seed, there was one thing about like these teams that just seemed to get him. It's kind of arbitrary. Like there's no like it's based into statistics, but it's kind of not really. It can be based in like people's perception of you.
Are we talking 3-point percentage?
No, Shaka Smart, ever since he made the move from VCU to Texas, has lost to a double-digit seed every single time. At Texas, he lost to 2 13 seeds and a 12 seed. At Marquette, he's lost to 13 seeds and 2 10 seeds. This year, New Mexico, last year, NC State. I forget who it was the year before that, but his Texas teams are notorious for getting upset. They lost to a 14 seed Abilene Christian. Like, when it comes to going up against underdogs, when the lights are bright, he tends to really struggle. And then I'm not saying he sucks or shitting on him, but I'm just saying, like, his teams tend to struggle to get it done when the lights are bright and they go up against an opponent that should not beat them. So that's all I'll say against that. Like you said, I agree with your analysis on that one. Let me look at some other games in the first round. A team that, honestly, I had them winning this, but a team that I will say, kind of, took me by surprise and, like, they're playing better than I expected them to would be Maryland. Maryland, they've played good this year, but they really lack some marquee wins. They absolutely dismantled Grand Canyon. Like, it wasn't even close. That game was 81-49, but I think this Grand Canyon team just doesn't have the magic it did last year. This Maryland team, I just think, is too fundamentally sound. They do everything. They don't do everything amazingly, but they do everything great. They're great at what they do. They're not amazing like some of these one seeds, but they're great at everything they do. They're great at rebounding. Like, they're just a well-rounded team, in my opinion. So, You got another game you'd want to highlight? I have another one, but I just want to see if you wanted to highlight another one before we move on
to the second round. There's nothing else in the first round that I really wanted to point out. Oh, wait, no. Hang on. McNeese versus Clemson. We need to talk about it.
Yeah. McNeese, Clemson. As a State fan, this game had me hyped. Not just because Clemson and NC State's rival losing, but because how our prospective coach's team was playing. Hot damn. They were. Clemson, I'll let you do the analysis since it's your game, but
I mean, I wouldn't say it. You pointed it out. I mean, Clemson just did not really show up at all in this first half. Like, oh my gosh, it was embarrassing. Just unable to make the shots. They were able to kind of amount a little bit of a good run in the second half. Really kind of like started to catch up a little bit, scoring 54 points. But I'm sorry, you can't come back from a 31-13 deficit with like the shooting percentages that you had. I mean, granted, on the stat sheet when it's all said and done, yes, does Clemson have like the slightly better 3-point percentage? Yes. Clemson shot 30% at the 3-point, McNeese 21%. Field goal percentage. McNeese did 43. Clemson 36, like not abhorrent, but just, oh my gosh, like the inconsistency is what killed Clemson this game, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, just there was a deficit that was just too big to overcome. Granted, hats off to Clemson for being able to like mount a comeback, but just at the end of the day, like McNeese came to show up and they were able to keep pace throughout the entire game.
Yeah, one thing I will say is Clemson's 3-point shooting percentage, 30% is a little skewed. 30% includes the stint at the end of the game where they were shooting like prime Curry. Clemson to start the second half didn't score very many points. Halfway through the second half, how many points do you think Clemson had?
Repeat, halfway through the second half?
Yeah, at the halfway mark of the second half, how many points do you think Clemson had?
29, 30.
Yeah, they scored almost 40 points in the final 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's literally just because they got hot from three. Relatively speaking, I mean, still 30%, but like,
yeah.
If I were to look at the first half field goal percentage, I'd probably be pretty bad, like you said.
Yeah.
But honestly, this was a feel good like win for particularly state fans. Like this was our coach. I think, like you said, it's just McNeese is able to keep pace. And I think the biggest thing for McNeese was they got out in transition. That was saying it wasn't necessarily all turnovers. And yes, Clemson had 13, and that's a lot. But I think the big thing was even on like misses, McNeese was able to get out in transition. And that's something NC State fans like. Like when we have a coach that plays transition basketball, things tend to go our way. Well, because it's just a good way to play. It's the easiest defense to go up against is no defense or a defense that's confused.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what transition is. NC State won a national championship playing fucking transition basketball. So
absolutely. And one thing I will say off of this, because I don't think we're going to be covering McNeese like that much with them losing to Purdue in the next round. But I will say this, like right now, as a UNC fan, I'm on watch right now. I'm on watch against State. The same fear that I feel like NC State football fans should be having against UNC right now is the same fear I feel like UNC basketball fans should be having right now. Yeah, you had the better season. Yeah, you got your wins against your rivals. You know, you beat State. Congratulations. This game's changing, and the power dynamics are going to start to shift. I'm glad UNC got ahead of the curve and hired a GM, but I'm not going to lie. I'm worried about State this year. And that's something that like a lot of UNC fans haven't said about NC State in basketball right now. Like NC State, they're on the up right now. I mean, granted, it's pretty hard to go down from what you had like this past year.
Yeah.
But like I'm going to say,
the worst
like,
season in modern history. Yes.
Yeah. Like granted, like obviously, almost any type of movement would have made NC State on the up. But I'm just saying, like right now, I got to give credit where credit's due. Great hire by NC State, and I'm just not nervous, but like I'm waiting in anticipation to see how Hubert Davis is going to be responding, especially with us losing some important players in the transfer portal. Like if we don't get our act right, it's going to be a tough couple years in basketball.
And I feel like it's NC State and Carolina are kind of pouring cash into the opposites because right now, Carolina basketball last couple of years, as much as UNC fans are upset with Hubert Davis, I think a Final Four in what was it, an Elite Eight or a Sweet 16 last year? It was Elite Eight,
Sweet
right?
Sweet 16.
Sweet 16, like that's objectively like not bad for basketball. And like you went to a Final Four, a national championship, you beat Duke, you sent Coach K packing.
Yes.
You lost to probably like yes, you blew it massively, but that was probably one of the best Kansas teams that's ever walked the earth.
Yeah.
So, and yes, I know it's not up to the standard of like Roy, but being able to go from Dean to Roy, that I think that is a once in a lifetime like coaching change.
That's Favre
like
to Rodgers. That's Favre to Rodgers right there.
Like UNC fans that are alive likely will not see a coaching change that goes that smoothly and immediately resume that success.
Yes.
Like any team would be lucky to have that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was also UNC prior to like Roy Williams, they were both like UNC. They always hired in house, but it's like they had so much success that the assistant coaches knew what they were doing. So there was necessarily no need. And I think Carolina was trying to get back to people in house. Like, Roy was really successful. So they're like, well, Hubert was kind of his right hand man. Why not? Which it made sense at the time. But
And I'm still high. Like I'm higher on Hubert than a lot of like other Carolina fans, especially Carolina fans in the middle of the season. I was still rocking with Hubert Davis when people were calling for his head when it was looking like we weren't going to make the tournament. Like I'm still fine with Hubert Davis. I'm just saying right now, I'm glad we got our GM, but like, listen, NC State's on watch right now, and like right now with how like the power dynamics of triangle basketball right now, like it's a fight for number two right now, and I want it to be a fight for number one. Be I want to be better than Duke. I want to be better than State. But right now, State's making a great case for number two right now. You got to check yourself right now. Assert yourself and put all put these warning signs on notice and start responding to them.
yeah, and NC State is taking a big risk because NC State's whole MO was they kind of wanted to almost have like a money ball approach when it came to recruiting. But Will Wade's come out and said he's like, we have the money to now. He's like, they want to recruit like Duke and UNC. They want to recruit countrywide. And I'm like, I could see that one of those two ways. I'm like, I think there would definitely be a few years where we just swing an absolute wind farm. Like we go in on a bunch of big recruits and we don't get them. But I feel like all it's going to take is one really good year of recruiting to really NC State, it used to be on the map. Like people, like a lot of kids our age don't realize like the way the world stops for Duke UNC when our parents are little, the world stops for State Carolina like that. Like Duke pre Krzyzewski, like do you know what Duke was? It's still a meme today. Do you know what Duke was known for back then? You were either rich or from New Jersey. I know that's still the case now, but like good
Nixon went to
basketball.
law school there, I think.
Yeah. Now Duke's got a third pillar. Duke's got a third pillar basketball. They used to not to. Like even Krzyzewski's early years, it was it wasn't who's going to win the ACC was State Carolina or Virginia. Tamales back, but and I think this is a good thing that
Our viewership just went back up again.
yeah, the viewership just went back up. Kitten in the video. We'll put him in the thumbnail. The thumbnail will be Tamale. But no, like I said, I mean, it was a great showing, but I don't think we'll highlight the Purdue one either. I have some things I'd like to say for that game, other than I think the score was closer than it indicated after the triple technical foul that gave them 8 free throws. I like to see a coach that stands up for his team, and I love that Will Wade tries to stand up. But you cannot just absolutely lose your fucking shit on the officials. Yes, was it objectively a bad call? Absolutely. Was I looking at the TV going, how do you call that? Oh, absolutely. But you then can't have your bet. Okay. It's okay to get mad at the referees. And I know the whole thing about this tournament is Dan Hurley does worse and has gotten away with it, which that is my point. Before people give Will Wade shit, I watched Dan Hurley do 10 times worse to officials, and he hasn't gotten one. He's gotten maybe one technical foul this tournament.
He's got plot armor.
That's a claw, Tamale. That's a claw. But no. Yeah, he's got plot armor. But as that coach, you got to stay center because 2 or 3 of his bench players got in the official's face. Because my dad, he's like, what happened? He's like, that game was close. And he's like, McNeese was making a comeback. Why'd they just get 8 points in 30 seconds? I was like, yeah, some bench players got in the ref's face, and I just got to, you can't do that. If you take that away, that's a 6-point game. That's a 6-point game. Not knocking him. I love the passion of fighting for your team. I feel like that's an energy that, not saying Keats didn't fight for that team. Hey, buddy. I'm not saying Keats didn't fight for that team, but I'm just saying that he looks like he's ready to go to war for these boys. So,
yeah.
The only other game I'd like to highlight was because it's a team that I feel like really let me down and a team that surprised me. UCLA, Utah State. That was just an ass beating. 72-47. I had Utah State winning. Most people did too. Because UCLA was kind of a team where it's like they had a lot of hype going into the year, but then they kind of lost that hype. And then they gained the hype back. Carolina beat them. They kind of lost hype. And it was kind of, they bounced around a lot this year, like in and out of relevance. And then they finally, they cemented themselves back. I mean, yeah, they had the second round loss to Tennessee. It was close, but they really had a statement win there. And I will say that's a team that I give applause to. I think they were overseeded at like a 7 seed, but that's semantics. So that's all I have for the first round. Any games you want to highlight for second round now?
Going into the second round, let's talk about Michigan, Texas A&M. Michigan really able, like, after a sketchy win against UC San Diego, just absolutely kind of able to pull away and just like it was a close game, back and forth, but just like that final 2 minutes, just really like Michigan was just able to like absolutely put it on and come away with the win against Texas A&M. Story of this one, in my opinion, Michigan was able, like, granted, 9 turnovers. That's good by Michigan standards in my book. But 48 rebounds, shooting at 43% field goal percentage. That's just good Michigan basketball right there, and they were able to handle Texas A&M in the final minutes when it mattered most. So I'm on. I'm kind of getting back on the Michigan hype train a little bit. I'm not sure how they're going to fare against Auburn, but I'm looking at this Michigan team right now.
I am too. Michigan's one where I feel like they surprised me. They were really good, but then they kind of were on like a cold streak almost, and they had some kind of head scratching ones. But I'm high on them. Texas A, I feel like Texas A&M. I know you're like, well, of course, Garrett. They were 4 and 5 seeds. I feel like Texas A&M and Michigan are very comparable when it comes to their respective conferences. I know Michigan won the Big Ten. Michigan won the Big Ten, right? Or no, or
Yes,
Wisconsin won it.
with Michigan.
Michigan won the Big Ten. I feel like outside of the conference tournaments, I feel like both are very comparable. Very, very comparable when it comes to like their conference resume and how they play in big moments. So honestly, that was a matchup that intrigued me. Michigan was able to kind of pull away and have a solid, like, I wouldn't say blowout, but like once you start to get into that 10-point range, that's starting to get like, not necessarily dominance. And I know the score doesn't always tell the whole story, but for a team from the SEC that was pretty hyped up, I think that's kind of a lackluster showing. If you don't, especially after only a 9-point win over Yale, that's kind of a lackluster showing in my opinion. So another game I'd like to highlight would be UConn, Florida. Like, this was a great game to watch. I didn't know how to feel because I like pushing. I mean, obviously being a state and a province fan, I like to push the Big East. It's a style of play, like a style of basketball that I feel like should be make a comeback. A lot of outside of Marquette and Creighton, it's a lot of teams that play fundamentally sound basketball, high percentage shots. They'll back you down in the post. They'll beat you up. They're a boxing match. Big East basketball games are a boxing match, and like particularly if you get an official who lets you play, like doesn't call the rules like there's some rules nerd. You can get a physical match that's really fun to watch, and I think that's what UConn did. UConn brought that physical Big East, like everyone's talking about, oh, Florida's going to blow the doors off of all these like slow teams that they play. Not really. UConn kind of forced Florida to play UConn's game. I know UConn didn't come away with the win and like they collapsed in the final minutes and forgot how to shoot, but UConn was the blueprint. And I know there's been a lot of like propaganda against slow-paced teams. Honestly, playing slow may be the way to go to beat these teams. Like everyone talks about with like Alabama, Florida, and Auburn, you got to just like outgun them. Honestly, if I'm Auburn, I'm dreading playing Michigan State. They don't necessarily play slow, but they play average and they're really efficient. Or if I'm, Auburn, I'm dreading running into a Houston in the national championship. Like I feel like with how efficient and Houston's more efficient than UConn. That is like their nightmare scenario
Hmm.
is if they end up against Houston or Duke. Duke Duke plays a little slow. They don't play slow, but Duke plays normal pace. But they are oh my god, they are oh so efficient. So, but like I said, UConn just kind of forgot how to shoot in the final moments. So that's all I'll say. And any other game you want to highlight in this second round? This second round was a little, I don't want to say dull, but like I have another game I want to highlight, but I'm curious to see if you have this game highlighted as well. So
I mean, I gotta highlight St. John's versus Arkansas,
yeah,
just
that was
because
the one.
like throughout the game, like I was thinking, like when St. John's was down, I was like, okay, this is like, well, for a while, like St. John's was up and like kind of was back and forth a little bit. St. John's was like kind of like had some slacking moments here and there, but that was like when St. John slacks a little bit, that's when I'm like, okay, this is where like you know it's about to get good.
Yeah,
But just just not able to really capitalize, in my opinion. Like St. John's was able to go on a little bit of run, get it close, but just Arkansas just really able to like come away with it in the end. If I had to like point something out, it was just the field goal percentage. The shots just weren't lying for St. John's. 28% field goal percentage, 9% 3 point. I know we tried to like dismantle the uh, concept, like the idea that St. John's is like an amazing 3 point shooting team. Like no, they when they shoot their shots, it's inside the 3 point. They're shooting those long range twos. That's what they're doing best. But they were just unable to even hit those with a 28 percentage field goal percentage. I just think the shots weren't lying for them, and I was disappointed to see St. John's like uh, performance in this one because I had them going a pretty far long way, and it just didn't like turn out that way.
yeah. It's the main thing was I think just the shooting. St. John's played fine defensively. I think they did awesome. But and I feel like if it were one team to beat St. John's, it would be Arkansas. Just Calipari versus Patino, the classic matchup right there. Classic
Hmm.
matchup. Like you're gonna get cinema every time that happens. So,
Yes.
but the point I'd like to make with this game is not. It's I know people's like questioning. It was mainly people questioning Patino's decision to pull RJ Lewis. RJ Lewis was like 3 for 20. He played 30 minutes, and my issue was at the post game press conference. And this is my problem with sports media is I'm okay with it being negative. There are negative and sad things that happen in sports. And they've got to be covered. But my problem was the reporter kept, the reporters were trying to get Patino to say something negative about his player, and eventually he goes, "I'm not going to drag my own player. You know exactly why I kept him out. You saw he had played 30 minutes. You saw how he was shooting, and like, so you're saying he played terribly?" He goes, "Did I say that?" And he's like, "You're not going to get me to say something bad about a player." And he's like, "Are you disappointed with them?" And he goes, "I don't need to be. He's disappointed in himself. Me saying this on air is just going to make him feel worse. He already feels terrible." And he's like, "Yes." He's like, "Yes, I know it's their college basketball players. They're paid to do this at this point." But he's like, "This is a 22-year-old kid who, in essentially the biggest game of his life, went 3 for 20. And you want me to sit here and dog him when he's already being dogged on social media?" He's like, "You're not like, I can appreciate, like, there's coaches who like to try and stay professional in press conferences. But I do have a soft spot for coaches who will stand up for their players in press conferences. I mean, the big one everyone thinks of is Mike Gundy in that one about where he's like, he's a fucking kid. Come after me. I'm a man. Like,
I'm
if
40.
you're, I'm 40. If you're going to come after me, come after me. He's like, that's my job. He's like, these are kids playing a sport they love in college. And I know people's point nowadays is boo hoo, they make money. I'm sorry. Like, if I had someone come, like, I mean, granted, I'm a little more confrontational than some people, so I feel like if someone were to ever have written a swim article about me, I probably would have doxed them on Twitter. Not actually, like I probably would have found where they lived, but that's my really only note was about that, and it would be one thing to ask him why, but I think if it's something where it's that obvious, you're just trying to get him to say something to generate clicks, and I know at the end of the day that's their job is to
Yeah.
generate clicks. That's part of the reason why ACC hate in basketball is so prevalent. Is it gets clicks.
Hmm.
Even when the ACC was like the top dog every single year, my dad's like, it was always that narrative. Oh, is the ACC going to fall off? And then they get 8 teams in the tournament, and an ACC team would win. So, but I'm looking at some other second round games. Creighton Auburn was a good one. I don't have much to say on that. It's just I feel like Auburn was their quality just showed, and I think Creighton really missing Pop Isaacs. For me, this Creighton team, yes, they were good, but like in terms of this current, like, I don't mean Greg McDermott when I talk about the Creighton guard. When I talk about the Creighton guard, I mean like the players that really made Creighton over the last couple of years. Like, yes, they still had Stephen Ashworth. Yes, they still had RK, like Ryan Kalkbrenner. Like he is the Creighton player over the last 4 years. But I mean, like just kind of the supporting cast, like Trey Alexander, knockdown 3-point shooter last year. I just think they were missing that other explosive edge. Like Kalkbrenner and Ashworth were a nice 1-2 punch. And they had other supporting players who'd step up, but they didn't have that other guy who they could really count on if they couldn't get Kalkbrenner or Ashworth going. And like that's what I mean by the Creighton guard over the last 4 years is moving on. So this honestly doesn't surprise me. Yes, I had an inkling that I think Creighton was going to make it close, but other than that, only other game second round that I would highlight. Actually, do you have one you'd highlight before we jump and move on?
I mean, we can talk about BYU, Wisconsin. I feel like that was a pretty it was a very close game. Wisconsin was a team that I was pretty high on, but at the end of the day, I think the rebounds from BYU played a big factor. BYU getting 41 rebounds, almost shooting 50% at the field goal, and 46% at the 3-point. Just overall, BYU really able to just kind of keep like Wisconsin down. Like after like a little exchange at the beginning of the first half, points starting to go back and forth. BYU kind of took off, and granted, there were periods where Wisconsin was really starting to like kind of go on a run a little bit. BYU was just able to keep the pace, keep it out on their level, not let the game get away from them. And I feel like that's what really like BYU's ability to keep that pace at the level that they want is something that really helped them secure this game.
Yeah, and BYU is a team like I'm really high on them. They I saw a statistic where like they when it comes to BYU, if the season was just from now or New Year's Eve till now, they'd be the #2 team in the nation. They really went on a nice turnaround. And they don't play like lights out fast like they usually do. Like that was kind of Mark Pope's style of play, who's now at Kentucky. But like they're just so efficient and they're good. They've got good defense. They've got a really good offense. And they're just able to hit the shots when they need to. They took down a Wisconsin team that I had going really far. So after that, I'm really high on them, just similar to you. One final game I'll highlight in the second round is Michigan State, New Mexico. New Mexico, they gave it all they could in that game. They fought so hard. They did everything they could. And it was just not enough. And no hate to them. They're a solid squad. The only Mountain West team that really lived up to the hype this year. Outside of Colorado State, which I'm sure you'll highlight next or somewhat. But it's just they played good. It's just I feel like the quality from Michigan State was too much. It's Izzo in March, so you know what you're getting there.
Yeah, jumping into Maryland versus Colorado State, this was an absolute treat of a game. Uh, Colorado State just they gave everything that they had. Oh my Lord, it looked like they had Maryland dead to rights, but just in the final seconds of the game, Derek Queen shoots that buzzer beater and sends Maryland to the Sweet 16. This is like March Madness right here. This is like where dreams are made and dreams die. Just overall, just absolute stellar performance by both Colorado State and Maryland. Maryland, like it was looking sketchy at times, but they were able to keep their composure and able to just eke out that win in the end. But I great game, great game.
Yeah, and I know people are talking about the travel at the end of the game. You can say what you want. I mean, missed calls happen. And honestly, with the rules with the gather step, whether you like it or not, probably, and the referees weren't able to see it, so that's a fair call. I know John Fanta was saying, like, do they ever call it in that scenario? And you really want the refs like to determine the outcome of a game. But what I will say to that is, like, this is if the referees saw it, which they didn't. They kind of had a blocked angle, so I'm not blaming them. I'm saying if they were to see it, and this whole argument of, do you want the referees to, like, affect the outcome of the game? My whole thing is, if it's in the rule book, call it. Like, if someone breaks a rule to win, they shouldn't win. Like, I'm sorry, like, you hear it all the time in football with pass interference. It's like, oh, referees don't want to affect the outcome of the game. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, I mean, a
That,
call, if you're going to call it in the first minutes of the game, you should call it in the last minutes of the game.
that's like saying this is like, say I have a high pressure test and I cheat. And the proctor's like, well, I wouldn't want to affect his outcome of the test. No, no, no,
But it's the final to see if he graduates, great game.
no. Like, but no, that's just my point on that. Any other second round matchups you want to head on, or is that pretty much all for you?
That's pretty much all for me.
All right, welcome back in. All right, we took a little bit of a break there. We're going to get into some predictions for the Sweet 16 and on. We're going to first start with Auburn and Michigan. So, who do you have here?
I'm not gonna lie, this is a close matchup in my mind. Like Michigan really able to get a solid win against Texas A&M. I think it's like they're gonna live by their aggressive ball and die by their aggressive ball. Like if they're trying to force like passes like too much and then force these turnover and are just forcing like un like foreseen and just unnecessary errors against Auburn, Auburn's going to absolutely murder you. But something about this Michigan team against like Texas A&M kind of makes me go like, they may have like the playbook to like kind of really deal with these SEC teams. I don't think Auburn's losing this round, so I got Auburn moving on. But I believe the
Yeah,
blueprint for beating Auburn is going to be revealed in this game.
I agree as well. It's just Michigan. I feel like they just commit to, like, I feel like if it weren't for the turnovers, they would be the team to beat them. They would be the team to beat them if it weren't for the turnovers. But they commit some of the most turnovers in Power Five with how fast Auburn, how aggressive Auburn is. I feel like that's just going to play right into Auburn's hands. I feel like it's going to be close for a little bit, but I think Auburn's going to pull away, and it could get ugly for Michigan, in my mind. So
Yeah.
moving on, we've got
And moving on, we got Ole Miss versus Michigan State. Ole Miss have been pretty hot lately, not gonna lie. Like solid win against UNC, solid win against Iowa State. That Iowa State win was like pretty impressive in my book. Is that going to be enough to take down Michigan State? I'm going to have to say no on this one. I think the run for Ole Miss is going to end. I feel like Michigan State's just really going to be able to play their style of basketball, and I don't see Ole Miss forcing them out of their style of play. So I'm going to go with Michigan State.
I am as well. I think this is kind of where the road ends for Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss has been shooting the wall really well. Not to the extent where, like, where Carolina, they shot the ball just like lights out against San Diego State, and it's kind of similar to baseball. Like, you don't want to use up all the runs in one game, or usually a game where you put 20 on a team, like the next game, like you almost have a no hitter from how bad
Yeah,
you're hitting.
yeah.
So I've got Michigan State. I feel like, they've gotten a proper scare. Like, yes, I know they ended up winning by 25, but Bryant was close for a while. And New Mexico State, I feel like they've gotten two proper scares. I think they'll be scared straight here, and I think they'll win convincingly over Ole Miss. I think it'll be a good game, but I think it'll be convincing. So moving on, we've got Florida and Maryland. This is an interesting matchup. Maryland's kind of a team that they've kind of up their stuff lately. They've kind of shown, like, they've I'm higher on them than I was. I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that enough against Florida? I'm not sure, but they're going up against a Florida team that UConn started, like, it may not be the blueprint for beating Florida, but I feel like UConn gave teams a good idea of how to do it. Slow them down, make it a really physical game inside. But you got to hit your shots down the stretch. That's going to be a big one. You got to hit your shots down the stretch. Do I think Maryland necessarily plays the way that is needed to beat Florida? I'm not sure. I'd like to think so, but for me, I've got Florida here. I think Florida's going to keep on rolling. So give me Florida in this one.
I got Florida in this one as well. I like Maryland a lot, but I think they just played too close against Colorado State, and I feel like the high of that game winner is really they're going to have a little bit of a hangover starting out with this one, and you can't have a hangover when you're going up against Florida. So I got Florida winning this one.
Up next, we got Texas Tech and Arkansas. Arkansas, they're not a bad team. They've played well. They beat a Kansas team. They beat St. John's, but I feel like the only reason they really beat St. John's is because they shot horribly. And, of course, Gareth, but, like, I feel like Arkansas is one of those teams where, like, St. John's, they needed them to play badly. Like, had St. John's been on, I think St. John's gets that. And Texas Tech, in my mind, they've been on. Yeah, UNCW played it close to them, but what low seed doesn't play outside of 16 seeds? What low seed doesn't play close to the team for a little bit? So for me, I've got Texas Tech in this one. I think not necessarily the Magic's going to wear off for Arkansas, but I think Texas Tech doesn't make the mistakes that would be needed to keep Arkansas in the game. And I just think the matter of St. John's, they weren't able to capitalize off the mistakes Arkansas made. They weren't able to capitalize off the droughts. They capitalized off most of them, but I think Texas Tech's a team where they're going to be able to capitalize off all those droughts. Like, they've got the firepower to do it. So I've got Texas Tech in this one.
I don't know. I'm kind of split on this one. Like, I'm starting to feel that Arkansas magic a little bit, but I just do think that Texas Tech can just put it on another level. Like, I know we like harp on like pace of play and like saying like it's a little bit of an overrated stat, but I just feel like Arkansas was the type of team that like could benefit from like your opponent being a little bit slower, and we saw that against St. John's. But with like Texas Tech, I just feel like they're just going to outshoot and just run and wear Arkansas down. So I got Texas Tech winning this one.
Very fair. Up next, we've got Duke and Arizona. The Duke's just been dominant, and even against a Baylor team that looked really good against Mississippi State. But for me, I've got Duke here. I think they're just too good. Cooper Flagg's healthy. They're playing like on another level. Cooper Flagg's coming back for another year. They're high off of that. So
yeah, I got Duke as well. Like they're like just see them. They're still my championship pick for a reason, and I just got Duke being Arizona.
And this is where for me my picks get a little interesting. BYU, Alabama. Alabama, pretty convincing against St. Mary's, but they also played slow. And when slow teams have an off night against fast teams, it looks way worse than it should have been. And
Hmm.
I think St. Mary's had a little bit of an off night. They lost by 14. But Alabama, they've had some good ones. They won at Auburn. They somehow managed that. But they've also had some questionable ones where the colloquial opinion kind of is that Alabama got bailed out versus Robert Morris by the officials. I don't ever like to say that as like the reason someone won, but that was kind of the consensus take around social media. And they did not look good against Robert Morris. Robert Morris made it like was losing. They made it a game several times. They made it really interesting in the end. Claw. They made it really interesting in the end. Don't fall, buddy. They made it really, really interesting in the end. So that's what I will say.
Got any
Um,
takes, Tamale?
Bama or
Insightful analysis as always.
Bama or BYU? I know it's tough. I think he's going to think about it. He looks like he's thinking. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but no, from there, I think I've actually got BYU. Like when I say hot, I don't mean like oh they got hot in the conference tournament. BYU been hot since
Hmm.
then. And I think they've turned a new leaf. And I've got BYU in this one. I don't necessarily have them as my national champion, but I just think they're just playing so well. Yes, it was a close one with Wisconsin, but they played well against it. I know it's a mid-major VCU team, but that was kind of a trendy upset pick was VCU over BYU. But for me, they're playing well. They're playing better than people think they would have. And I've got BYU in this, and I just think the kind of flaws, but like what made BYU last year was their pace. It was kind of a blessing and a curse, but they've kind of rectified that, and they're just a really efficient team now. So that's why I've got BYU. And I know efficiency, efficiency. It's just their ability to score points per possession. And that honestly is what basketball is about. How many possessions do you go empty-handed? How many possessions do you capitalize? How many defensive possessions do you limit teams to? And I just think Alabama, I feel like relies too much on their pace of play. They kind of fly by the seat of their pants. And outside of the Gordon Palm metric, they really are kind of, play too like when they play fast, it kind of goes their way, but they almost play too fast, if you know what I mean. Or if they have an
Yeah.
off night, it could get really bad. So for me, I've got BYU here.
This is a toss up for me, but you've kind of convinced me about BYU on this one. I just feel like Alabama's definitely not a team to take lightly, like at all. Like they can definitely turn it up when they want to turn it up, but just like the BYU's being able to get the win against Wisconsin really kind of made me a little bit of a homer for them. If they're able to just play their style of basketball and just keep it in their possession and try to limit like Alabama's hot streaks, I see them being able to win. But like, I just feel like Alabama's just going to be able to turn it up on this one. So I got Alabama winning.
Fair. No, I respect it. It's so.
It's the number 2 seed. Like I'm not going too bold on this one on my picks.
Yeah, and that's fair. I will say after their hot streak, BYU in the Big 12 championship did get, or Big 12 semifinals did get absolutely housed by Houston.
Yeah.
But it is Houston.
Yes.
So, and it was just came from a lackluster shooting first half. So, moving on, we've got Houston and Purdue. Houston, I kind of bought into the anti-slow pace, and I thought Houston was too slow for their own good. But then I've just seen the way Houston's played, and they beat a Gonzaga team that everyone's like, yeah, that Gonzaga team after how they played Georgia is going to put belt to ass to Houston. And that's just not what happened. Yes, Gonzaga made it interesting in the end, but Houston was up big for a while, and it was only until the Gonzaga three started falling that the game got close. For me, I'm really high on this Houston team, and they've got me really debating on whether I think they have me really debating whether I think they might be Duke in this case. So I've got Houston over Purdue easy. Purdue, they beat McNeese handedly, but a lot of those points came from Will Wade, mental breakdown. So for me, I've got Houston.
I'm not necessarily sold on Purdue at all, in my opinion. I feel like just not the best of seasons for them in Big Ten play. I just feel like Houston's just way too dominant. If they're like I just see them just absolutely kind of steamrolling Purdue on this one. I feel like this is going to be a fraud check, in my opinion. I think Purdue just doesn't have the shooting capability, and I just don't think they're gonna try to turn it up against Houston, but just Houston's going to be able to weather any storm and just like absolutely play their style of basketball and slow it down on their terms.
I absolutely agree. The final matchup of the Sweet 16, we've got Kentucky and Tennessee. For me, Kentucky for me is kind of in this tournament answered a lot of question marks, particularly coming off like beating that hot Illinois team by 9. They just they really did for me. I wasn't as high on them. Like I felt like Kentucky, they had an up and down season, in my opinion. I don't feel like that's just my opinion. They did have an up and down season. So for me, it's just they've just really been able to kind of turn around the narrative this season. They kind of broke that narrative of not being able to get out of the first weekend, which for those who don't know, the first weekend is the round of 32 and or round of 64, round of 32. But in their convincing win over Illinois, they just did a lot of things right. They shot about 38% from three. They were almost 50% from the field. They limited turnovers, which has been a big thing for them in the past couple of years tournaments. They've been awful with turning the ball over, and they only had a grand total of 5 to Illinois' 14. So I think the key for this Kentucky basketball team is not playing too fast for themselves, like that fast style of play that Mark Pope loves. Not like still they can play fast, but not playing too terribly fast. Playing fast enough that benefits them, but not too fast where they're making careless and haphazard mistakes. So for me, that's what's going to get it done for Kentucky if they're able to play that way. I know Tennessee is a really slow and efficient team, but I'm kind of convinced that slow teams can get it done. But I think if Kentucky's having an on night and they're able to limit their turnovers and play efficient while playing fast, I think that could be tough for Tennessee. And in this game, something's got to give. Is it going to be Kentucky's tempo that's going to give, and Kentucky's tempo and efficiency, or is it going to be Tennessee's tempo that gives? So it's just a question of what's going to give.
I feel I like for me this is a toss up. Tennessee has been swept by Kentucky this year. Like didn't play them in the SEC tournament. Kentucky won both away and home against Tennessee. Is it? But like I feel like Tennessee just has a lot to prove right now. Like Kentucky, yes, you beat the narrative of getting out in the first weekend, but I just don't know if this team is built for like a long run. And I feel like Tennessee is going to be playing like they have something they need to prove something. They need to take down this Kentucky team. They've had a great season overall, but just unable to get it done against Kentucky. I feel like you can't go 0 for 3 against Kentucky. So I got Tennessee winning this one.
Fair. All right, that gives us Arkansas, Mississippi, or Michigan State, Florida, Texas Tech, Duke, BYU, Houston, Kentucky. So Auburn, Michigan State. Who you got here?
I got Michigan State taking down Auburn on this one. I feel like if Michigan State's like for us, our kind of consensus right now is if you're able to slow it down on your terms, you're going to be going far in this tournament, which is something that a lot of people are kind of shying away from. And I feel like Michigan State's going to be able to do that. I got them beating Auburn.
Yeah, I do too. I just think this Michigan State team's been too good. There was a lot of questions early in the season about them after some early kind of rocky results. But I feel like they've been able to right the ship. They've been able to go on a run. They swept their rival Michigan. The Big Ten tournament, they did great. And I mean, not great, but Big Ten tournament, they got some key wins. They beat Oregon, a tournament team. And they've just kind of been able to answer the call all season. Their last loss prior to the Big Ten tournament, prior to their loss to Wisconsin, they hadn't lost since, I believe, January, where they lost to UCLA on the road. But that's a road conference game. Those are hard to win. But this Michigan State team, they're good at what they do. Let me see if I can pull up the one thing I wanted to talk about them. Yeah, they're just Michigan State. They don't play horribly fast, but they're one of the more efficient teams. Um, both them and Houston. Houston plays slightly slower, but Michigan State plays a little slower than Tennessee. Um, but for me, I know Auburn is, they're really efficient and they're really fast, but God forbid they have an off night. Michigan State tends to be a little bit more physical, not quite to the level of physicality of UConn, but if they're able to slow it down, and we saw that Auburn is very vulnerable when teams slow the game down. And if they're able to do that, I feel like I agree with you. I feel like that could spell disaster for Auburn. So I've got Michigan State in this. And it's no knock to Bruce Pearl, but it's Tom Izzo. You know, even in years when Michigan State probably shouldn't have made the tournament, like last year and the year before, he still, like, they don't necessarily go for it, but they still find a way to get a statement win that goes, no, I believe here. This year he's got the team, they're playing well, and it's Tom Izzo. So I've got Michigan State as well. Up next
After
we got
that, we
Florida.
get Florida, Texas Tech. This one, for me, I'm trying to figure out if this is where Florida's run ends. I feel like we have the blueprint for how Florida can fall. It's just a matter of whether or not Texas Tech can pull it off. I got Florida winning this one. I like Texas Tech a lot, but I just think Florida is just going to be more physical, and I think they're just the better shooters overall, and I just got them moving on to the Final Four.
I do, and I made a mistake last time saying a UConn almost beat Auburn. No, it was Creighton played it close, but they also played that physical style. They were physical inside with Kalkbrenner. So, but Florida, like, I agree. Texas Tech, I don't feel like they have the level of, like, I'm not saying they're not a physical team, but I'm saying they don't play physical. Like, that's not their MO. They can be if they need to, but that's not their MO. And, like, they really don't have that much of a difference in pace from Florida, like a difference of enough where I feel like it would bother them. So for me, like I said, I've got Auburn in this one. Texas Tech, they are efficient. They do what they need to get done, but they've had some questionable losses this season, more so than Florida. So I've got Florida in this one as well. Florida on to the Final Four.
After
Next, we've
that,
got
Duke versus Alabama. I got Duke winning this one. Spoiler, I said they were going to go to the Natty. That still holds true. I just think Duke with Cooper Flag just has all the answers for Alabama. Able to take down Auburn earlier this year, and I feel like Auburn is more of a sound team than Alabama, so I got Duke winning this one.
Yeah, I had Duke BYU. Like I said, I've got Duke winning. They're just, I know the colloquial take is that, all they have is Cooper Flags. No. Cooper Flag, no. They've got pieces upon pieces upon pieces.
Call them
In
Lego
addition,
with how many
call them
pieces they got.
Lego. They've got pieces where they've got bench warmers that can pick up the slack if they need to. So I've got Duke in this one as well. Duke on the Final Four, which leaves us with Houston and Kentucky. And for Aiden is Houston, Tennessee. Houston, Tennessee for you, Aiden. Very similar style of play. Very efficient, but very slow. What's your thought process here?
I got Houston winning this one. I don't see their style of play being a detriment to them, and I just see them going to the Final Four with it. They're the most efficient with their style of play, and I just don't think Tennessee has an answer for it.
Yeah, I agree. And Tennessee has had some question. I mean, not every team has some questionable losses, but I feel like Tennessee's got some real head scratchers. So I agree. For Houston, Kentucky, honestly, I'm really high on this Houston team. I'm not saying Kentucky doesn't have what it takes, but for me, I just think Houston passes the eye test in terms of these teams. Like, yeah, Kentucky's proved a lot this year. But for me, I just think this Houston team, they answered a lot of the questions that I had about them, which is just like, is their slow pace of play, even slower than last year, going to affect them? But no, I feel like their key here is keeping everyone healthy, because their undoing last year was an injury. I forget exactly what happened to, but it was their star player, kind of the headline of the tournament guy. But as once their guy went down, Duke kind of solidified themselves in that game. So I've got Houston here, which leaves us with a Final Four of, I think we have the same Final Four for this: Michigan
Yep.
State, Florida, Duke, and Houston. So first game, Michigan State, Florida. Who you got?
Michigan State. If this is where I think the physicality is going to really get Florida. We saw it with them against UConn. I feel like Michigan State's just a better version of UConn that's going to be able to capitalize on Florida's mistakes and potential miscues, limited they may be. I feel like Michigan State's going to be able to take advantage of them, and I got them going to the national championship.
Yeah, Michigan State, while they necessarily don't play at the slow of pace, they don't play at the as slow of pace as Houston, but I feel like it'll be enough difference between them and Florida where it'll be a little bit of a culture shock. Yes, they play faster. They don't play like, off the fucking walls Alabama fast. But I just feel like Michigan State, they've got they've got Tom Izzo. Yes, they're efficient. They're not necessarily say as efficient as Florida, but I think just with their physicality, I've got Michigan State, and I think Tom Izzo. Not saying that Florida coach doesn't know what he's doing, but I think experience wins in these scenarios. So for me, I've got Michigan State, which leaves us with Duke and Houston.
For me, I know Houston is dominant at their pace of play, but for me, if I had to rank pace of plays and efficiency, I'll always take a balanced team that's efficient over a slow team that's efficient, and I'll take a slow team that's efficient over a fast team that can be hot and cold. For me, I feel like Duke's just the epitome of being balanced, but also being efficient. They can turn it up when they want to. They can slow it down when they want to. And I feel like that duality of being able to flip between those two is what's going to be able to get Duke past Houston on this one.
I agree as well. While I do think there is a way for Duke or for Houston to win this, but I feel like being in the middle, it's not just that their tempo is in the middle. They have games where they're the fastest team in America, and they have games where they're the slowest team in America. And I think I agree that versatility that Duke has, where they're able to speed it up, slow it down. And I'm not saying Houston can't play fast, and they can, but they don't necessarily look to get out in transition like Duke does. And honestly, transition, like I said, a lot of the times it can be free points or just free foul shots. And ultimately, if you're able to capitalize off that and get free points, play against, a disorganized defense, the more times you're able to maximize that, I feel like that leans in Duke's favor here. I'm not saying Houston can't do it. I'm just saying, for me, from what I've seen from the statistics, what I've seen from the eye test, I've got Duke. So I've got Duke in this, which leaves us with Duke, Michigan State. Duke, yeah, I've got Duke. I think Duke's the best team in America right now. Number one in the net. You call us chalk or whatever. For those who know what chalk means, that just means you take the status quo and you go based on the stats. But hey, this tournament very similar to 2019. Honestly, if the 2019 trend were to hold, Houston would win because they're the slowest team in the tournament. Virginia won that year. But someone brought this up on TikTok that this tournament has stark, striking similarities to the 2019 tournament. You've got a Shaka Smart team losing to a double-digit seed, per usual. You've got Duke with a standout freshman, BYU looking hot, Alabama looking hot, Alabama kind of having a resurgence similar to that. A slow team that, they've kind of had some scares against an 8 seed, but, they've still looked really solid. But for me, I think the difference here is the Duke with the standout freshman is going to make it to the national championship. They're far and away the best team for me. It's just not even close. Like you said, they're able to speed it up, slow it down. They're a lot more efficient than Michigan State. You hear Aiden and I throwing around efficiency. We're talking about offensive efficiency. I do think defensive efficiency matters. Believe me, I do. Let me pull this up real quick. Pomeroy. Let me highlight this. Pomeroy rankings. Yes, I know Houston is one of the best teams when it comes to defense. All right, let me pull up defensive rating. Houston's number one team. They have 88 points per 100 possessions. That's pretty good. But you know who's just behind them in defensive rating? Duke. Offensive rating. Who's the number one offensive team in the country? Duke. Do you know where Houston is? 10th. When it comes to my deciding factor for this is everything that Houston's good at, Duke does just as well, if not better. So defense, Duke does just as well. 88 points per 100 possessions and 90 points per 100 possessions allowed. That's semantics at that point. That's one basket. Duke allows one more basket per 100 possessions than Houston. I feel like that's just semantics at that point. That's just, we're arguing apples and oranges at that point. Or not apples and oranges, but we're arguing the finest of margins right there. Or splitting hairs. But when it comes to Houston's good on offense, they're efficient. But you know who's more efficient? Duke. They get it done, which is why I'm at Duke. And I'm not saying, or not Duke, I mean Michigan State. Excuse me. Sorry, I don't know why I was rationalizing Duke, Houston. Duke, Michigan State. Sorry, my bad. I'm a little tired. So Michigan State, about on par. Duke offensive rating. Duke far and away better than Michigan State. So the point holds. The point holds for me. The point still holds. Sorry, I knew what I was looking at Michigan State stats, but I said Houston. I'm sorry. The point still holds. Everything that Michigan State does, Duke does better, and that's my reasoning. Not saying they can't do it. Not saying they can't pull off a miracle against the stats, but their defenses are about comparable. But Duke's offense is far and away better. And I think that's going to be the tiebreaker for me. Duke's the number one offense and the number 3 defense. So I just think they fit the bill here. So I've got Duke, which I think brings us to the conclusion of the March Madness bracket. But like I said, very similar to 2019, but I think this time the Duke with the freshman phenom gets it done. Anything else you want to add?
Nah, I'm good. We can move into MLB opening day.
So we've got MLB opening day coming up this Thursday. Like I said, I've talked about this off air. I'm going to try and make a concerted effort to follow the MLB this year. We may not necessarily cover it every episode, but I think Aiden and I are going to make a decent effort to follow it. I want to become a fan and watch it. I'm following 2 teams this year. I don't necessarily I'm necessarily going to be a fan of them, but obviously the Red Sox being, my girlfriend's a Red Sox fan. Everyone up here is a Red Sox fan. Fenway is reasonably priced and it's not too far. So I figured cheering for hometown baseball with being able to get to the home games, not too bad. And obviously the Reds, family ties. My great grandfather, a big Reds fan. So we'll go with that. But for me, Red Sox open Thursday with the Texas Rangers. Who do the Cubs open up with, Aiden? I'm blanking on it.
Hang on, I need to pull that up. Cubs will be opening up against the Diamondbacks.
I'm not terribly familiar with how their spring training went. Now, I know for those who don't know, spring training doesn't always have necessarily a bearing on how the team does. There have been teams who finished dead last in the spring training rankings, and they've gone to the World Series finals. There have been teams who've absolutely killed it in spring training and then, missed the playoffs. Based on the Red Sox spring training, I think they'll be decent. I think they'll be a step up. The Rangers, I don't think they play the Rangers in spring training, but I will say about spring training is they're trying things and they're testing out rosters, and some of those guys are probably going to end up in the minors, and that's not a bad thing, but they're going to end up in the farm system. But what I will say for spring training is Red Sox teams that have won the World Series have almost lost to Boston College in baseball. And, it's spring training. Those guys are in shape. The college guys are in shape while the pros are not. So, but something I'll be looking forward to. What's the current line for this game? Let me take a look at it. Not that I'm a betting man, but I just want to see what people are saying. Right now, people have Boston, the run line. What's the RL? Um, Currently, the let me look at that. There's no matchup predictor on it, but ESPN Bet has the Texas Rangers at 1.5 favorite. So honestly, fine margin. Red Sox could win, but I'm going to try and learn more about this. I mean, obviously, lot for me to learn. I don't know much about the Red Sox. I know certain players, like obviously I know Rafael Danvers, and I know the meme with Alex Bregman going to the Red Sox. The whole meme, Alex Bregman is your second baseman. Like the whole drama between Rafael Devers, the second baseman getting pushed to third base while bringing in Alex Bregman. So interesting things of concern to look out for that I've actually kept tabs on is the standout first baseman Tristan Cassis. He's day to day with an injury. Backup second baseman Romy Gonzalez is day to day. Relief pitcher Zach Penrod's out. Giovanni Moran, relief pitcher, also day to day, and Matakashi Yoshida is out, starting left fielder. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. For the Cubs, you got anything, Aiden?
Cubs are looking pretty solid. Am I going to say that they're a contender for the World Series? No, this is definitely not their year. But in a national NL Central, I think they have the capability to take the NL Central. Just looking, I'm going to do a brief little overview of like my predictions of how each league is going to be going. Just my kind of like personal. You can take it for what it is. Take it with a huge grain of salt, but just kind of what I've been seeing in preseason predictions. The Cubs, when it comes to the Central, like their main adversary is going to be the Brewers from Milwaukee. Just kind of doing a kind of like just to go through everything. Right now, the main player on the Cubs that a lot of people are going to be looking at is Matt Shaw, uh, opening day third baseman, and potential to be like a long-term solution with some like young talent that the Cubs have been desperately needing. Uh, that kind of leads them. The main like component like that could prohibit them from going to the playoffs will be the Milwaukee Brewers. They've kind of had their the Cubs' number for like the past couple years now, but I'm starting to notice a little bit of a shift in the trends from what I've been seeing. Projected playoff odds for the Brewers are at 28%, while the Cubs are rocking at over 50. So that's leading for a potential playoff berth for the Cubs. If I'm going to go through the entirety of the NL National League, I'll have to say that the NL East and the NL West are definitely a lot more stacked than the Central, which I feel like is going to be good for the Cubs, at least when it comes to the playoffs. In the East, we got the Braves, Mets, and Phillies just vying at a shot for dominance. Phillies have been on an absolute roll. Mets have been doing good in recent memory, in recent years, and the Braves have always been pretty consistent, but over the past couple years, they've been kind of like falling off when it comes to October baseball. If I had to go with just a straight prediction right now, I think I got the Phillies winning this one. I just feel like they kind of got all the intangibles going for them. Going over to the West, it's all Dodgers, baby. Granted, the Arizona Diamondbacks are an absolute solid team, and in most years, they would definitely, with their lineup, would be a contender for the World Series, but with just how LA has been able to kind of dismantle some narratives of them not being able to be consistent in October baseball, as they're now the defending world champions. I got LA by a mile in my predictions for this season. It's all good. They have Shohei Ohtani, the face of the league right now, but also a really solid lineup on any given day. If injuries don't plague this Dodgers team, I see them winning the World Series right now. Going over to the American League, the East is looking stacked as ever. We got the Baltimore Orioles, Boston Red Sox with their newly acquired lineup. And the New York Yankees. Aaron Judge, I feel like, is going to be having another terrific year when it comes to hitting, but I do definitely see a little bit of a fall off. So I'm going to probably see the Boston Red Sox being able to maybe pass the Yankees this year in production. That would kind of leave my prediction either being the Baltimore Orioles or the Boston Red Sox. Since why not? I'm gonna, and my predictions don't mean much. I'll have the Red Sox winning the East. When it comes to the AL Central, just not necessarily the strongest of divisions, kind of like the NL Central. Detroit Tigers had a really solid run. Last year when it came to just end of season play. I was kind of being a little bit of a Detroit homer a little bit come October baseball, just because like I wanted to see them win something for once. Do I think they could replicate that magic this year? No, but I definitely know that Cleveland and Chicago are definitely not going to be contenders. So I probably might have to give this to the Kansas City Royals, but my heart is saying Detroit can make another run. So in my official prediction, I'm going to say Detroit's got this one, and that leads us to the AL West, where the Seattle Mariners has been making some talks for a solid playoff run. The Houston Astros are going to be seeing if their dynasty is officially over. I know they've lost a lot of key players, so that's definitely going to be a factor. If I had to give my prediction right now, I'll say the Astros are their best years are behind them right now, so I'm going to have to give this to the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah. So obviously looking at these, I'm still learning. For me, I'm gonna start off with obviously, the most obvious one. The Dodgers, I think for me the Dodgers have they've got the NL West on lock for me. Then from there for the NL Central, thinking about that one for me is kind of not a toss up, but like I'm trying to think back
It
on
really
just like
is. It really is. If you like look at it, I mean, I just the Pirates awful, Cardinals falling off, and the Reds just haven't done anything. It's really just going to be between Chicago and Milwaukee. Milwaukee has had more of the recent success, but Chicago is kind of starting to look like Chicago might be making a run this year. So I
and
consider them the safe to bet.
you mentioned Kyle Tucker, right, as well. Like he's kind of
Yeah,
he was a big pickup for them, and now they're projected to have 91 wins, which
yeah.
is the third best behind the Dodgers and the Braves. So I'm gonna go with them on that. So I do know some of it. So um, for me, moving on, so it would be to the NL East now, if I'm not mistaken. NL East,
You are correct.
NL East. So NL East for me, um, I've got the Mets. I know the colloquial pick is the Braves, but the Mets are on the up. They've got a lot of momentum going for them. So for me, I've got the Mets winning it. It's just returning production, and I feel like it's their turn. Braves are always a solid bet, but everyone around me in North Carolina, they're either Nationals or Mets fans, and it's just or Nationals or Braves fans, and I'm about tired of like no hate to the Braves, but I don't know. For me, the Braves just annoy me, so I'm taking the Mets on this one.
They're just the
Over
de
to
facto South team, so
yeah, into the West, we've got Rangers, Mariners, Athletics, Angels, and Astros. For me, I know the Astros like talking about their dynasty and stuff like that. And I know Mariners kind of in a trendy pick. Angels are all right. But for me, I've got the Texas Rangers. I mean, they're a solid team. I feel like they always are solid. Um, uh, yeah, they've just got a lot of. Excuse me. Sorry, this is the AL West. Sorry. Oh, I was looking at the wrong thing. AL West. Yeah, Rangers. Um, so I feel like they're always kind of solid. They're just they're projected to have 89 wins, second best. They have a lot of returning production. They also have picked up a lot of talent in the off season. And from what I've heard and what I've read, they've got young players who they're showing great promise, and they're really consistent young players like Wyatt Langford, Josh Jung, Evan Carter. They've also their lineup currently. They have returning players like Nathan Evaldi and Jacob Degrom, but I think this new influx of talent that are not also and young talent in any sport can be really inconsistent, but with consistent young talent, I feel like this is going to push them over the line. I feel like they're going to be back. They're World Series champs 2023. I think they're going to return to the top of the AL West. So I've got them winning the AL West. From there, AL Central. I mean, obviously you got Detroit Tigers, Cleveland Guardians, Minnesota Twins, Kansas City Royals. I'm gonna go with the Royals, and that's when the Royals have been solid. I know Cleveland had a decent run in the playoffs last year, but for me, the Royals, they're just good. I've got the Royals. I feel like they're consistent. They're the good choice. Uh, so for me, I got the Royals, and then obviously the American League East. Got Baltimore, Boston, New York. Honestly, I think Boston does have a lot of returning production, but for me, I think um, I've got the Yankees. They went to the World Series last year, if I'm not mistaken. They're projected 90 and 72. Orioles projected at 89 and 73. Um, Yankees are supposed to get a bye. Orioles are supposed to get a wild card spot. But for me, honestly, I'm gonna have a little bit of a nuanced take. I think the Red Sox are gonna win, but I've actually got the Red Sox, or I think the Yankees are gonna win, but I've actually got the Red Sox above the Orioles. So that'll round out my predictions. Like I said, I don't know much about the MLB, so I just kind of went with like the chalk answers for some of them. So I think Alex Bregman being our second baseman is gonna push us over. So
Alex
we'll go with
Bregman's your
that.
second baseman.
Alex Bregman is our second base. Blueberry fact.
Blueberry.
Alex Bregman's our second baseman. So from there, shall we move on to where do you want to head from here? We can go
You can move to
soccer.
soccer. There's no real MMA news that I really want to talk about right now. Honestly, I haven't been paying attention too much in these past couple weeks. Just no real news. Um, I know things are going to pick up in the next couple weeks, but honestly, for a casuals guide, it's a little bit of a drought right now. If I had to say one thing, though, let me just pull it up. There is a fight night coming up this week that honestly I'm going to be tuning into just because it's on ESPN2. We got Brandon Moreno versus Steve Irke, Irsig, Australian fighter. Brandon Moreno, former flyweight champion, has lost his title, but has been trying to make a little bit of a run as of late, getting a win against Amir Alabaz. I got Brandon Moreno winning this one. I really like his jiu-jitsu. Surprisingly, I feel like he has some really solid striking game, and I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna hide my biases. I'm a big Brandon Moreno fan. I like his style of fighting, and his he had a pretty solid title run back in 2022 and 2023. Um, I got him winning this one. I think he's got a solid shot at it, and once he gets it, I think maybe another flyweight championship shot might be in his future. Uh, he's really good with getting people in submissions, but also surprisingly good with the knockout. 5 knockouts in his career, 11 wins by submission. I feel like the Assassin Baby, as his nickname is going to show out again, and he's got a really solid chance to make another title run. But UFC 314 is going to be in the next couple weeks. I'm going to do a breakdown of all the pay-per-view fights for that one. But in the meantime, a little bit calm on the MMA front, but no real news.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've got some not so great soccer to talk about. The U.S., despite making it to the quarterfinal of the Nations League, for those who know, Nations League is kind of like a standard thing across all of them. Each continent has their own Nations League. It's essentially to make more meaningful soccer in between World Cups, just so teams, because used to when teams would just play a bunch of friendlies in between World Cups, they just throw like the teenagers out there, and your superstars and like the big players really wouldn't have many things to look forward to in between. I mean, you have your Continental Cup, like you have the Euro every 4 years, you have the CONCACAF Gold Cup every two, Copa America every four-ish. But like they wanted to increase the amount of meaningful soccer so it wasn't like such a culture shock when you guys finally came together, which I think is good. But for the first time, actually for the second time in its history, the U.S. will not be winning the Nations League. The U.S. kind of had a lock on the Nations League the past couple of years, but following the U.S.'s quarterfinal loss to Panama, who's been the U.S.'s kryptonite for like the last 20 years, and then just kind of a just embarrassing performance against Canada, losing 2-1. Embarrassing is all I can say. I'm sure for those of you who follow soccer, you've seen what they've talked about. They didn't play like they wanted to be there. It was just kind of fucking embarrassing. The first game, fair play to Panama. They beat us how they were going to beat us, how they had to. They just outlasted us. The U.S. physically dominated that game, 67% possession, 12 shots, 5 shots on target. In that game, I will say, I won't be all gloom and doom. The U.S. did everything right in that game except score. Dominated possession, dominated shots, 5 shots on target. Expected, based on the statistics, where are we? 577 accurate passes, almost 400 passes in the opposition half, incredibly accurate on long balls, really accurate on crosses, just almost 40 touches in the opposition box. They really were just laying it on Panama statistically, but that's not what happened. Panama was able to pull it out with a goal in the last minute that just kind of snuck by Matt Turner. Not to say I could do any better, but honestly, for Matt Turner, from where that shot was and just where you are in the end, you can't let that beat you. Like, I know he beat you far post and you were guarding your near post, but like, dude, I think his lack of minutes, like, yes, he plays at Crystal Palace, but honestly, in my opinion, his lack of playing meaningful minutes anywhere, like, for the U.S., my main thing was we need to get players into Europe. We did. Okay, that box is checked. But the problem is our players are now sitting on the bench in Europe. They're being developed, but they're not developing their game. They're getting the skills, they're getting the decision making, but they don't have that in-game experience we'd like them to have. And 30-year-old Matt Turner sitting the fucking bench at Crystal Palace isn't doing him any favors. He looks rusty when he comes out for the national team. It's not great. So, number one, but we can't pin it all on Matt Turner. He let one goal in, like, so what? But just looking at just the general stats, I'm trying to see if I can find the XG for the stats. I don't believe it's going to show the stats. But like I said, Panama beat us how they were going to have to beat us. It's essentially how they play. They pack it in defensively and let the U.S. just kind of like run themselves to death. So that's what happened. But moving on to the game, like, yes, this was a disappointment. Yes, certain players look like they didn't want to be there, probably because they didn't want to be there. Because some of these players, and this is not an excuse at all. I think it's embarrassing that they played like this, but a lot of these players have like bigger concerns when it comes to other stuff in Europe with where their clubs are right now. But the big one was Canada. This game was just disgusting. No one acted like they wanted to be there. The only two players that acted like they wanted to be there were Diego Luna and Charlotte FC's. Shout out Charlotte FC's own Patrick Ajiman, who got the lone goal. Canada took an early in this game. Ajiman drew level, and then Jonathan David scored in the 60th minute. Ajman and Diego Luna were the only players who had above a 6.5 rating. For those of you who don't know, players, I believe, start the match with a 6.5 rating. So those are the only two players who, like, rating was not in the negatives. So Matt Turner, 5.8, Joe Scally, 6.0, Carter Vickers, 6.4. It was incredibly just disheartening. Our big name stars looked like they didn't want to be there. They were lazy. Canada beat us to every 50-50 ball. It was just a disaster. We dominated possession, but Canada dominated shots on target, big chances. The U.S. really didn't have any meaningful, like, outside the Ajman goal, they didn't really have any meaningful thing. Yeah, they dominated possession, accurate crosses, but it was just like every single 50-50 category outside of aerial duels, which just comes down to headers. Duels are just like people battling for the ball. Canada dominated that. It's just they wanted it more. And that's on par with the Jesse Marsh team. Jesse Marsh, who I wanted to get the U.S. job, but granted, Potch was a home run hire, but Marsh was who I wanted to get it over Berhalter. His teams, they just play hard. His teams play hard. And I love that. They play hard. They go out there. They get it done. And honestly, it's just disappointing. Like, a lot of people were wanting to fire Pochettino immediately. Honestly, I don't think that's the way to go. Outside of this, Pochettino's had a pretty good showing recently. I mean, yeah, we only beat Jamaica 1-0, but then we turned around and beat them 4-2. In a game where we didn't play a lot of stars, we turned around and beat Venezuela, a team that's had our numbers. We beat Venezuela's A team with our C team. And then we had a nice 3-0 win over Costa Rica back in January. And then you put this forward. I'm not putting this one on Pochettino like some people are. I just think our players did not look like they wanted to be there. Canada wanted it way more. I mean, all of Canada's players played really well. Tajon Buchanan, Jonathan David, the big name. Alphonso Davies, who plays for Bayern Munich, probably the best left back in the world right now. But like I said, it was just kind of embarrassing. For me, this is going to be kind of a hot take. We need to, I know these are, I'm not saying Christian Pulisic was the issue. He didn't play well, but he at least played like he wanted to be there, that's what you get with him. He works hard. But the rest of these players, Weah, McKennie, Scally, Mark McKenzie, Carter Vickers, Max Arfsisten, he an MLS player, but he played awful. Matt Turner was abysmal. These players need to know that their spots aren't, solidified. Because the players whose spots in this team aren't solidified, the players who, if this were March, if we looked at the MLS, if we looked at these player slots for the World Cup as spots in the March Madness tournament, The players whose spots are on the bubble right now were the players who were playing the hardest. Ajman, likely not going to get the nod for that. Likely not going to be selected. Diego Luna, likely not going to be selected for that World Cup. So, but people whose spots likely are solidified, oh, it was bad. I think these players need to play like rent is due next week. But I will say, and I like I said, I like that our players play in Europe. They play with a quality that we haven't seen. But when the majority of the U.S. team was made up of MLS players, for the most part, they played hard. Towards the end of Jurgen Klinsmann's tenure, they weren't great, but like prime MLS U.S. men's national team, like I'm talking Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey, like that 2014 World Cup squad, you got heart out of them. Yes, they'd eventually lose because they get outclassed, like when they lost to Germany 1-0, but they fought for all of those 90 minutes. They took the world champions that year to the brink. They almost drew level. So, I just want the effort. If this team was able, like for once, effort's the issue. It used to be like I dreamed for the days where quality and just the quality of player wouldn't be the U.S.'s issue. But then we got saddled with an effort issue, and it's honestly it's worse. I'd rather take a team that's going to fight and get outclassed rather than a team that's going to get outworked. So that's really all I've got to say about U.S. soccer. Piss poor showing. I don't think it's a Pochettino issue. This team's played fine outside of these two games. We've got a huge friendly against Turkey and Switzerland, two World Cup quality sides. And outside of that, what pisses me off is there was an outside after the loss to Panama. There's no real high stakes soccer left for these guys. And what determines success in the World Cup? High stakes soccer, experience in high stakes soccer. The only thing we've got left is the Gold Cup. And if we play like we did, we're going to get grouped in the Gold Cup. We're not going to make it out of the group stage. So for me, the U.S. need to hit the ground running in the Gold Cup. They like to send the C squad to the Gold Cup. No, I'm talking the headliners need to be there. The headliners need to be our Gold Cup squad. So that's all I'll say for that, for soccer. Do you have anything else to add, like college baseball, anything?
No, I mean, Carolina's been on a little bit of a downtrend when it just comes to losing a couple games in series. Recently lost a series to Louisville, and looking to bring it around a little bit. They're ranked now 21, falling from where they were earlier in this season, around 6. Hopefully, Carolina has what it takes to turn it around. But I'm not fully feeling like it's the end right now. It's baseball. There comes the wins, comes the losses, and there's a lot of opportunities to come back. Recently, tonight, UNC got a win against South Carolina, improving their record to 19-6. So once again, like they're not absolutely horrible. This past weekend, they played Boston College, in which they won Sunday. Hang on, let me make sure that
They won Friday, Saturday. They
Saturday.
dropped Saturday.
Yeah, they dropped Saturday. This weekend, they will be playing Miami. So Miami's 14-11. Good opportunity to get a couple more wins under their belt and hopefully move up in the rankings. And what do you have anything for like NC State?
NC State, they've certainly turned their season around after starting 5-5. They won, I believe, like 19. They won, I believe, 13 straight until now. Rough loss to South Carolina upstate, but like we've talked about with these midweek games on here previously, there's a lot of upsets that happen on midweek games. But we've talked about, midweek games are kind of where you experiment with like your younger guys just to get them some experience. Rehab your players, like almost like a minor league game, if you will.
Yeah.
Not saying that you don't play the big names, but like usually with the pitching staff, you play a lot of freshmen. So obviously not a good look giving up 15 to South Carolina State, but still like top teams get housed midweek. Like number one LSU is lost. Like when LSU was number one last year, and I think this year they've lost midweek games. So pretty bad competition. But like I said, as of late, NC State's turned around. I think it's because their main issue was just the errors. That's just really what it was for me. It was the errors and like the unforced mistakes. So obviously, I know not happy with NC State's thing. Over the weekend, they won the series against Pitt. They took Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They lost 5-3. The game had to be cut short because NC State had a flight they had to get. That's kind of what's hard. No, honestly, that's kind of what's hard about these Sunday games in baseball is you see a lot of final seven because the road team has a flight they have to catch. But what I will say about that one, I'm not exactly happy with the Pittsburgh coach. The game started at 1. They should have well been finished by 5. They were in the 7th inning and 5 at 5. I think the Pittsburgh coach knew what he was doing. He challenged every call. He asked for a replay review of every call, even if it wasn't controversial. Just kind of like, I don't want to say despicable because it's not completely evil, but I'd say it's not a great show of sportsmanship after losing the first 2 games. Like, I mean, hats off to Pitt for winning. Like, hats off to Pitt. They played a good game. But what I will say is, like, once Pitt got the lead and they started challenging every call, and like he argued every call, like even if it was like there's no chance, like you could kind of tell what they were doing.
Yeah.
And it was just a little frustrating. But I'm not saying that's why NC State lost. I'm just saying it's just frustrating that they weren't able to get the full 9 in because of that. They were well on pace to do that. And hey, the Friday game, NC State was in a similar situation. They were down going into the 7th inning, or they were down going into the 8th and 9th innings, and they pulled off a comeback on Friday. Saturday, they led the entire time, I believe, but like, it's just not something you want to see in the sport. Like, and that Sunday was NC State's first time losing to Pitt in 30 games. Like, NC State had never lost to Pitt before in baseball, and that was the first. Granted, I know they won the series, so what am I complaining about? But like, it would have been nice to see the series sweep and get that extra one. NC State currently sitting at 18-7, I believe, just 1 game behind Carolina. NC State was second in the ACC, if I'm not mistaken, until that weekend loss to Pitt. Who do they play this weekend? Let me look. Can you not bite me, please? Let me pull up NC State real quick. Pull up their schedule. Sorry, my computer's being a little slow. All right, where is it? Speak of midweek upsets, Louisville lost 12-2. They're number 18. They lost to not great Cincinnati squad. So looking, where is NC State's game earlier today? Wait, that's top 25. Where's ACC? Here we go. ACC, NC State. Where are they? I'm probably looking right at. Oh, here we go. Sorry, NC State 17-8. This weekend they play Duke. That'll be a tough one. Duke coming off a nice win against ECU. It's at Duke. It says the game's 12 a.m. on Thursday. I don't think that's correct, if I'm mistaken. So I think that's the weekend series. Beat Duke this weekend. Let me look at the ACC baseball standings. ACC baseball standings. It's loading, of course. Honestly, ACC baseball looking up here. NC State currently tied for 4th. Florida State leads the conference at 5-1. Georgia Tech and Wake Forest tied for 2nd at 7-2. I guess you could say NC State's tied for 3rd. On a technicality, they're 4th, but they're tied for 3rd with Clemson at 4-2. From there, Stanford and Duke are tied at 5-4. Or Stanford, Duke, California are tied for 4th at 5-4. Louisville's at 6th with 3-3. Carolina's in 7th with 4-5, tied with Virginia Tech at 4-5. When it comes to Duke, their baseball team's been kind of up and down this year. I mean, obviously, Saul went over an ECU squad. Baseball is kind of ECU sport. But for me, I'm confident. I think NC State will at least win one in this series, possibly two. I think they'll take the series 2-1. I think Duke, obviously being the home team, will get a win probably on Saturday, Friday or Saturday. They'll take it, but I think NC State will win. Probably either sandwich the two, or they'll go Friday, Saturday, and Duke will pick up win Sunday. So that's all I've got for NC State baseball. But like I said, also when it's kind of turned around, is NC State struggled early in the season because they're honestly, NC State's got the number 1 and number 2 closer in the nation for college baseball, Jacob Duden and Derek Smith. But they both had kind of a rough start to the year. You know, when your best 2 closers struggle, it's going to be rough. But you know, they've righted the ship. They've done really well. So I'm optimistic, and I'm optimistic Carolina will turn it around as well. And I know they're 4-5 in conference, but they've kind of had a rough go about start conference. But they've had a tough schedule. They've played the tougher parts of the ACC in their schedule for that. So I didn't turn around. I think we'll see both NC State and UNC and the NCAA tournament for this. So I'm not worried.
Maybe.
Got anything else to add? Anything else you want to touch on? I mean,
No.
like I said earlier, I'm going to do my best to learn more about the MLB as we get into this. So, and I'm still learning about the fight nights that are coming up. But I will say, I'm excited for this April lineup that you've talked about the UFC, and I'm definitely going to get into it. You said Patty the Baddy's fighting, so I'll definitely be into that. But hey, thank you guys for listening in. We really do appreciate it. We're going to bring back the clips. I forgot to do clips last week. I was a little busy, but the clips will be coming for this. So we're going to do a montage of everything we got wrong, kind of similar to the ending as we won't spoil it, but it'll be a montage of all the picks we got wrong. So from there, thank you guys. This will probably be clipped up into 3 or 4 mini episodes on our clips channel. So we'll probably do a baseball talk. We'll probably clip together the MLB and college. We'll do obviously a March Madness one. Soccer will probably be its own clip. We didn't take too many breaks today, so this episode may be going out as soon as we finish. So who knows? So thank you guys for listening in. We really do appreciate it, and we'll see you next week with probably we'll be down to Final Four, right? Yeah, we'll be down to Final Four. We'll talk Final Four predictions, probably highlight some MLB. You know, transfer portal will probably be a big proponent next one. Transfer portal, just with that open today. Quick mention: Providence is losing a lot of people in the portal. I'll hit on that next week. So thank you for listening in, and we'll talk to you next week.